Hello and welcome to this introduction video for the AF1 exam with myself, Sue Cox. In this video, I'll be covering the format of the AF1 exam and how you'll be tested. And I'll also go through a few pages of the tax tables just to highlight a few parts that I think will be of interest to you. Preparation is the key to passing any written exam, and I'll share with you a few techniques that I think might help. And lastly, I'll let you know what study aids you have available to help you prepare for your exam. Let's start with the format of the exam. The AF1 is a written exam and consists of 3 case studies. The first case study is the largest and the most important as it has 80 marks, whereas case study 2 and 3 both have 40 marks. This means that you have a total of 160 marks across the exam. The pass mark is 55%, which means you need to attain a minimum of 88 marks to pass. You have a time limit of 3 hours, and believe me, this goes very quickly. And lastly, don't forget you'll receive the tax tables in the exam, and that's 9 pages of very useful information at your fingertips. In preparation for your exam, you should make yourself familiar with these tax tables. Now, I won't go through all 9 pages in this video, but over the next few slides, I'll highlight a few pages that I think it will be good for you to know. Now, the first page of your tax tables details income tax, and this is the top half of that page. Of course, you have all the rates and the thresholds available, which is great, but I wanted to highlight the trusts part for you. As you can see, the word states trusts, which of course is plural, but the information that is listed only applies to discretionary trusts. Now, unless you realise this can be a bit misleading. However, it's great that you have the standard rate band of £1,000 listed. This means that the first £1,000 of income into a discretionary trust is taxed at the basic rate of where it's come from. If that income was from dividends, then of course the first £1,000 will be liable to income tax at the rate of 7.5%. Any excess income is then charged at the highest rate, which for dividends is 38.1. If the income had come from interest, then the first £1,000 would have been charged at 20% and the excess at 45%. The bottom of page 1 continues with income tax. And don't forget, you have all the maximum limits and tax relief amounts for the Enterprise Investment Scheme, Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme and the Venture Capital Trust. And these will definitely come in handy during the exam. Also, if you have a client whose adjusted net income is in excess of £100,000, the tax tables even explains how to reduce the personal allowance. The 4th page of the tax tables lists details about the capital gains tax, and there's lots of useful information here. However, let me highlight the capital gains tax for trusts. On this page, it states trusts generally. Now, the word generally can be confusing. This is relating to relevant property trusts only, as they have half the full exemption. Bare and absolute trusts have the full exemption. This is the last page of the tax tables that I'm going to show you. It's page 5, which is all about inheritance tax. And this slide is showing the bottom of that page. All the main exemptions are shown here: the annual, small gifts and weddings. And don't forget that if the annual exemption of £3,000 wasn't used in the previous tax year, a client can carry this forward and have £6,000 in this tax year. Also, quick succession relief is at the bottom of this page, and this is one of the examiner's favourites. You've still got to learn the formula, but at least you have the percentages and the time scales. We mentioned earlier about the 3 case studies and how case study 1 is the largest with 80 marks. Now let's talk about your time management in the exam. Think 1 minute equals 1 mark. This means that you should have 20 minutes of reading and preparation time left. 10 minutes should be dedicated to case study number 1, so that's 90 minutes in total, and 5 minutes to both case study 2 and 3, which means 45 minutes on each of these case studies. The time goes very quickly indeed, so make sure you keep an eye on the clock and don't spend too much time just on one case study. A bit more on exam technique. I'd like to say that you should be thinking about the quality of your answers and not the quantity. Short bullet points would be ideal, but please make sure that they are specific to the case study. All the tasks that you're asked to complete will show you the number of marks available in the exam. If you have a 10-mark task, then you should be thinking 10 marks equals 10 bullet points, which means 10 minutes can be spent on the task. Now, the exam is a positive marking exam, and this means that whatever you write down will be marked. Marks are never taken away for wrong answers. However, don't contradict yourself, as this just shows the examiner that you don't know the answer and they can't give you any marks. In this exam, expect calculations and remember to show all your workings. You may get the answer wrong, but you could still pick up very valuable marks for your workings. Last page on technique. You have 3 case studies to complete. As soon as you finish one case study, please remember to start the next case study on a new page. You must also leave at least 6 lines between each task. This space is actually for the marker's benefit, but it also helps you because you might suddenly have what I call a light bulb moment and you remember something, which means that you have the space to write it down. We've just looked at a few pages of the tax tables, but before you go into the exam, make sure that you are familiar with all the pages and the information on them. Another great technique is called task, text, task. A really common mistake that is made by delegates is that when they get into the exam, the first thing that they do is read the case study. I'm going to say don't do that. Instead, read the tasks first. The reason for this is that if you read the case study first, then the tasks, the first task might ask you to calculate the individual's tax liability. Well, this means that you've got to read the case study again to get the information. So by reading the task first, you find out what it is that you need to do, and then read the text. This should save you a bit of time by doing it this way. And lastly, whenever you answer a task, make sure you are specific to the clients. This is the syllabus for the AF1 exam. You can see that there is an entry guidance, and this states that it is assumed that candidates already have the knowledge gained from RO3, personal taxation, JO2, trusts, and elements within the RO5 or equivalent, which is the protection exam. The reason why I'm highlighting this is that if you don't have this knowledge, then you will need to read these case study texts. And if you haven't already taken, for instance, the JO2 exam, it's worth considering taking the JO2 exam at the same sitting. If you've got to read the study text, you might as well take the exam, and you could get 50 credits just in one sitting. The breakdown to how the marks are distributed varies between each exam. However, typically 120 marks go towards the personal tax and 40 marks to the JO2 exam. If you've looked at previous exam guides, you'll see that of those 120 marks, typically 40 of these are dedicated to calculations. And that's quite a lot, especially when you need 88 to pass. Now for the JO2 knowledge, you'll need to know the different types of trusts and their tax treatment, but also make sure you're comfortable with bankruptcy and all the different powers of attorney that are available. This is the last slide for this video, and it's all about the study aids that you have available. Firstly, you have the AF1 case study workbook. Now this is fairly thin, and you might have thought that this is all that you need to read. Absolutely not. As we've mentioned, you will also need to read the JO2 and RO3 study texts. There's only a small part needed for RO5, so you shouldn't need to read all of that study text. If you've received the CII's revision mate as part of your registration, then you'll find copies of the JO2, RO3 and the RO5 study text there. And also on Revision Mate, you have 7 practice papers. These are fantastic and really useful in your preparation for the exam. They're actually previous exams that have been updated to reflect the current year. And lastly, you also have lots of videos which you can watch to help update your knowledge and prepare you for your exam. And that brings us to the end of this video. I'd like to wish you all the best of luck for your forthcoming exam.